process councils as an example before. So we established those process councils. And of course, when you have a process council, it's good to have some key performance indicators. So we were helping, the tool set was helping us to establish those key performance indicators. And also we tried to use as out-of-the-box KPIs as possible. So maybe if you just click on that specific slide before we go to the rest, there was a lot of debate on those, and our company is different, so we have to make slightly different calculations. And we were luckily able to convince everybody that we use the out-of-the-box KPIs that are there. And, if we look at this and we find something is different because of the way that we operate, and we all agree that this is the way that we want to operate in the future, we leave it and we move on. But I think this was a very powerful thing. And I mean, in here you can see some of the key P2P KPIs that we were looking at, really looking at some of these things. Obviously, the baseline score is a really useful KPI, but you see some of the things here that came out: late deliveries, throughput, then, the invoice matching rate was not ideal. Now, there may be some reason for it, but this was a really good starting point, to have the focus for everybody in that council to do it, that we are clear on what we want to achieve, where we need to put our time, what are the things that we want to improve. And then, of course, later on you'll see some of the examples that we're going to talk about came out of looking at some of these KPIs. So if you go maybe just back to the support rate.
No, I wanted, you mentioned the best run score. I'm not sure everybody in the audience knows what they do, because this is something in context for from Signavio. It is an analysis of how close you are to the standard, and whether you're using the best possible way of doing an activity or not. And this is what the best run score tells you. And one thing that you had said to me before is actually having this data at hand really is helping to drive the discussion, and also the discussion towards standardization, from what I look.
I think that's a very important thing, because you take away a little bit of that emotion. If you look, for instance, at the baseline score, it looks 61%, so it's not bad. But then if you delve in a little bit deeper, you see that there's some big opcos that are performing processes slightly better than some of the smaller opcos. So, and now you can have a real proper conversation with the relevant data for that opco, with that organization management. Because we're such a federated company, you need to almost go to every single company and have that conversation with them. And then it really helps you, because you can also say what your colleague down the road is doing it slightly different on the same platform, and you've got, the way to prove to people that we're not coming to tell you something which is out of this world, but it's something that somebody else on the same platform in a similar business than you is already doing in a more effective and efficient way. So it really, really helps that conversation towards standardization.
Excellent. So and by the way, for the audience, the opcos are the subsidiaries, more or less, right? So the operational companies.
Correct, our operational companies.
Mm-hmm. So if we go back now to the overview, so having the key performance indicators was, let's say, a necessary prerequisite to have the conversations. What else do you look at in how you approach?
As you can see here, so once we've established those key performance indicators that we wanted to have a look at, specifically to monitor on a close basis, then it also allows the operational company. And I think that was really, really powerful, because everybody says, oh, I'm really special, I need to be able to do it in only my way because of those following reasons. And then you're able to show to people, but of course, there's some specific local requirements that we need to be cognizant of, and we need to keep those in mind to make sure that we're compliant. But the way we can approach things, it really helps to do this. And we were able to do these comparisons between the different operational companies in a very easy way, in a way that would have been much more complicated before. And in my previous role, we did do it, and it took way more time to do it. It was a very extremely manual process. And here, literally click off, you're able to change the company codes, and you can really compare. Then we also started looking specifically towards the S4 migration, this Delta best practice. Now, SAP gives us some best practices based on our industry that we can or cannot accept or agree with, and we may agree with them or not. And we found already some instances when we looked at those processes where we said, yeah, the way we are managing the process is really good for us. We do not want to change. Then obviously you will have a variance to that. And then it also helps us to create the BPN model. I think that is really important. I mean, it's the classic. I think everybody goes through that. Somebody was drawing some ways of data flow, put it in a folder and took it away and put it on the shelf out there that nobody really used. And now we're able to generate these models automatically already by selecting the most frequent transactions, and it really helped quite a lot of preparation. And I think it will also be very important going forward to enable us to keep monitoring that or have that information available that are really live and that's continuously updated. Now, I must admit there's still a lot of conversations with our colleagues around the value of this, but I think once people see this and see how easy it is, that it's not very complicated, we will definitely get. And then obviously at the end we have this platform, we have different operational companies, and we created the platform on such a basis that also to respect, in certain countries we need to respect confidentiality of data. So we've set it up in such a way that certain people have view rights of all the processes, but otherwise you just look at the data for your company and you're able to delve into those details and decide what you need to do there. So it's really flexible in the way we can apply it. So I think that was very useful as well.
Very glad to hear that. By the way, there are a few questions in the chat already, and thank you very much for a few. We can pick up during the conversations, others we will do in the Q&A. So to the audience, please do not hesitate to post your questions. I can answer right away one or two together with you. SAP Signavio provides a huge library of best practice processes, and this is what Lafrance had been referring to right away. And the best one score is calculated in SAP Signavio Process Insight and SAP Signavio Process Intelligence. It's the so-called plug-and-game approach. Now let's do the following. Maybe let's dive a little bit deeper into some of the tangible examples, Lafrance, that you were looking at. And you brought a few ones. Let's start with the non-PO payments and the early payments.
Sure. So if you can go to the next slide, please, because I think that is where all the details are. So obviously, when we started looking at this information, we realized in general, of course, even before we started looking at Signavio, we realized that there's quite a lot of discussions around non-POs. So there was a lot of procurement that's going on, for which there are no purchase orders raised, and there was plenty of reasons around it. So if you look at this here, we had and this was exactly linked to those initial KPIs that was decided that we will have a KPI where we say what is the non-PO thing, that we can track that and see how we can improve that. So this specifically was one of the examples that we had a look at. So if you look at the overall process insights that we achieved there, maybe speak on the next one as well. This is the view that you get from process insights. So you see there the different color codes for the different KPIs that is already in the process. So it really helps you to identify which part of the process that you want to focus on. Because obviously there's a huge amount of data in there. You cannot tackle them all. You need to decide on which is the ones that you want to focus on. And this is what we do. So we really looked at the non-PO invoices. So there you could see we already have that doesn't have a PO overall. Specifically, we broke it down in this example. You can see there's 3 countries that we looked at on this platform, and one of the countries that we already knew was a big culprit for this that is not so a good follower of the process. You can see there 54% of their purchases was done without PO. And again, just because it was data driven, there was no, oh, but maybe this, maybe that. It was just complete trust, and I think that's a very powerful conversation that you have with people. This is what really happened. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just telling you that this is what happened. And by the way, there's some other colleagues that are doing it slightly different. So it also encouraged that conversation between operational companies and people responsible for the process. So I think that's very, very powerful. And that's very difficult to that the majority of the payments were done between 8 and 30 days before the net due date, the bigger invoice. So that was interesting. So although the payment process took care of certain people got paid early and some people got paid late, the way we were paying, there was a large portion above the 8 days with higher volumes, so our amount that was paid early. So interesting, why are we doing that? And then you saw that you were able to drill it down really in an individual call, and you could have a look at that in that operational company. You can have a conversation with them about what it is about and why are they paying earlier. So that was really interesting conversation that came out. And then of course you need to take into account that there may have been a CapEx process that was ongoing, and there was a special negotiation that happened. So an invoice was paid earlier, so these type of things then, find out and understand how they have impacted the process. But yeah, that was a really interesting thing, and it created definitely awareness when we had a conversation with the operational companies about, everybody's careful about cash, and they thought they were doing well, but then you see these kind of outliers that show up, but there's a period outside the normal period that we need to be conscious about. So that was quite interesting, bringing that to life.
Actually, there's one question here. Is there some automated suggestion that is made regarding the optimal timing for taking advantage of the cash discount? Well, I can say it's not in Signavio, but how do you deal with that?
Well, that's an interesting conversation. We're having that conversation with one of our operating companies right now. They are actually doing only 2 payment runs a month. And actually in the next example that we wanted to discuss, you saw the impact of that. So I don't know what is the ultimate. I think it's very important. You need to have a look at your company. You need to obviously, it may have been that you've negotiated a better price, and then you need to respect those payment terms. So there's quite a lot of things that I think that you need to take into account. Although I think as well, if the company, if your vendors know that you pay, on a Wednesday always, then they will get their money even if it's 2 days late. I think it also builds trust with them. So it depends on the organization, your business. I don't think there's a perfect answer to that.
Okay. Maybe here with regard to this, we spoke a lot about these examples. We also saw the outcomes. One of the things that was mentioned, and where I would like to go a little bit deeper, are the process council. What is a process council? Maybe a little bit more broader. How have you organized? You're in a very federated environment, many subsidiaries, very autonomous subsidiaries. And now you come with all the data and the ideas on how to do better. How are you organized in terms of driving these improvement initiatives?
So the Process Council, historically, some years ago, we did have such councils, i.e. people responsible for it. We re-established it now specifically on the platform, on the 2 platforms that we have connected to Signavio at the moment. And the purpose of these councils is that we have a representative of each of the different operating companies that is on that platform joining. So you have a person that could be either in finance or procurement. That is the business process expert on a...
Okay, thanks for watching. That was only to look a bit